Welcome to this conversation with Office of Science Director Chris Fall on science and the community. We're glad you could join us in person and online. I think we're going to have a good conversation for the next hour and a half, and we want to begin with Oak Ridge National Laboratory Director Thomas Zacharia.
Thanks, Dave. So good afternoon and welcome to all of you here on site as well as out on Zoom to join this conversation with Dr. Chris Fall. As Dave said, I'm Thomas Zacharia, Director of Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and joining me is Dr. Chris Fall, who Director of Department of Energy's Office of Science, which is the major funder of Oak Ridge National Laboratory. In addition to some 150 participants online, we also have a small, socially distanced, mask-wearing group of invitees here with us at the laboratory. I just want to take a quick moment to acknowledge some key VIPs and distinguished folks who are joined us virtually via Zoom. We have representatives from our congressional offices, as well as local electeds from the Oak Ridge City Council, the Commissioner's Office, as well as Commission Chairman, as well as we also have representatives attending this conversation from the local school in the Superintendent's Office. Always thankful for having the local DOE office represented by Johnny Moore, the Office of Science manager here at the laboratory, and several other notable participants. We have Ron Townsend, the Executive Vice President of Battelle, joining us, again virtually, Chancellor Plowman from University of Tennessee, Knoxville, Chris Whaley, President of the Roane State Community College, Deborah Winsmith, who is the CEO and President of the U.S. Council on Competitiveness, Bill Kilbride, who is a member of the UT Battelle Board, as well as the TVA Board member, as well as Ken Ruder, President and CEO of UCOR. So again, a distinguished group of people joining us virtually via Zoom. And again, I want to thank all of you who are here locally to join us in this conversation. I'm going to embarrass at least one gentleman here by recognizing Randy Boyd, President of the University of Tennessee. Thank you, Randy, for joining us. And I would say that as a person who has worked at this laboratory for 34 years, I truly appreciate the contributions that UT and Battelle has made in terms of managing and stewarding this laboratory through a dramatic period of expansion and contribution over the last 2 decades. And we look forward to many more partnerships and collaboration. I also want to recognize Stacy Patterson and a whole host of others. So thank you, all of you, for being here. The Office of Science has 2 principal thrusts: direct support of scientific research, not only at its own national laboratory, but also at universities, as well as development and construction and operation of unique scientific user facilities. These are one-of-a-kind user facilities that the laboratories, through funding from DOE Office of Science, manage in support of scientists all over. It's also responsible for stewardship of 10 of the department's 17 national laboratories, including ORNL. Office of Science is a leading sponsor as a head of research at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, accounting for well over half of our $2 billion budget. It supports the operation of spallation neutron source, the high-flux isotope reactor, the Center for Nanophase Material Sciences, and the Oak Ridge Leadership Computing Facility, home to Summit, the nation's most powerful supercomputer. Office of Science is also funding several major projects at ORNL, including the proton power upgrade at the SNS, as well as the second target station, which will open new avenues for research and keep Oak Ridge as an international leader. The US ITER project, an international collaboration that represents a giant step toward commercial scale fusion energy, the exascale computing project and the frontier exascale computing system that will deliver the next generation of supercomputing that we expect to be deployed next year. The materials plasma exposure experiment to develop the materials necessary for fusion energy, and multiple projects supporting US independence in stable isotope production. And more recently, Office of Science announced a quantum science center led by Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So clearly, the leadership of the Office of Science is a matter of great importance to us here at Oak Ridge, as well as the nation. Dr. Fall was sworn in as Director of the Office of Science in May of 2019. He's a neuroscientist with a PhD in neuroscience and bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, both from the University of Virginia. He also has an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management at the Northwestern University. Before joining the Department of Energy, Dr. Fall's career included leadership positions with the Department of Defense, Office of Naval Research, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, and DOE's Advanced Research Projects Agency for Energy, ARPA-E. Dr. Fall was also a faculty member at the University of Illinois at Chicago. As Director of the Office of Science, Dr. Fall has been on point for the National Laboratory's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And from the beginning of his tenure, he has focused on realizing the maximum value of the billions of taxpayer dollars invested in the national laboratories. In particular, he has launched a Labs of the Future initiative that is driving a fresh look at these institutions. This initiative includes a new focus on regions and communities that host national labs, recognizing the key role that these communities can play in maximizing the impact of the laboratories. He's interested in how we can better now integrate the national labs with the surrounding cities or regions as employers, as drivers of identity, and as part of the economy. This is a question of vital importance to East Tennessee and to what Senator Lamar Alexander calls the Oak Ridge Corridor. So welcome, Chris, to the Oak Ridge Corridor. Thank you for spending time with us. Welcome to Oak Ridge.
Thank you, Thomas. Well, just going to say a few words because I think the opportunity here is to bring all these wonderful people into the conversation. It's a privilege to be here. Thanks for being willing to get together safely, obviously. It's a little awkward, I'll admit. This is the first sort of in-person event that I've experienced, I think, since March, at scale kind of thing. And so, and it's a testament really to Oak Ridge and the leadership and how you all have been handling COVID that we can do this. I know you're very careful. I had my first COVID test. Maybe some of you all had your first COVID test as well. It was interesting experience. Yeah. Anyway, so we have a fantastic group in the room here. As Thomas mentioned, also really neat. We have a list of folks who RSVP'd online, and obviously we'll figure this out. We're all getting used to this remote way of doing things. I wanted to say, as I said, a few words about why we're doing this before we move to the roundtable, and also tell you that this is a little bit of an experiment for us still. And I do want to acknowledge James Aiken here in the room on our team that's been leading this engagement effort. This is the fourth sort of event we've had like this with our labs, but again, the first one in person. And the reason we're doing this, Thomas mentioned our Laboratories of the Future initiative. It really is to hear from you all about, basically what it means to have a national laboratory in your region and what you think we could be doing to make this better. I mean, this is the goal. One thing that we've adjusted to in the experiment is this format. So in the other ones that we've done so far, it was a little bit of me talking and our great, phenomenal lab directors talking, but we realized the better opportunity is to bring you all in and actually ask you the questions instead of feeding us the questions and have a conversation. Thanks being willing to do this. Hopefully, we're laying the groundwork here for a longer conversation. This is sort of a first step. So I hope we get to talk about a few things. We hope, as I said, we start to understand what you think it means to have a national laboratory in your community. We want to know what it means for the lab to be a good neighbor. We want to understand what it means for our labs to be a good employer. I think we want to understand what it means for our lab, as Thomas mentioned, our labs. We're really talking about all the labs, but here at Oak Ridge, to be part of a vision for the community, for the city, for the region, to be what we think of as sort of an anchor tenant, in the mall, if you want a metaphor, of the area in terms of the economic development trajectory for the area. And when I say that this is a little bit of an experiment, what I mean is it's really not in the DNA. You all maybe know as well as anyone, not in the DNA of the Department of Energy to be engaging this way, right? We spent the first 50 years of our existence not telling anyone what we did, right? Trying not to tell anyone what we did, certainly not trying to open the doors. The labs date this one certainly among the first. It's not in our DNA to ask how we're doing, how can we fit in better, how can we help grow the community in the region. But there's a lot of opportunity. We do this amazing science. I don't think anyone doubts the technical work, the science that we do. That's exciting. We're discovering new things. I'm a scientist. I like to do science for science's sake. But some of these, it's also exciting because some of these things can be made useful, right? They can be made into companies. They can be made into jobs. They can help us chart the future of our kids. And so, a lab like Oak Ridge can be a powerful engine for ideas about that. So without abdicating the mission, speaking from the perspective of the Office of Science, our mission is basic science. I know that a lab like Oak Ridge does more than that. We're asking all the labs to focus a little bit less inwardly and a little bit more outwardly. We can do great science and also be great at training students. We can do great science at science students, technicians, trades. We can do great science and also be great at transitioning science to the private sector. And we can be an organizing center for all sorts of technical talent and companies, academics, and still do this discovery science. So, we'd like to understand more about what makes the area tick and where you all have the ideas. I mean, it doesn't, we're sitting, particularly me, sitting in Washington, wrapped in a bubble, surrounded by, whatever, and looking at my email all day. You can look at a place like Oak Ridge National Lab and understand intuitively what other benefits this area could be deriving from the lab. What more could we be doing? And sometimes it's really not about spending more money. We can talk about that. Hopefully we will talk about that. We are big on the idea of partnerships, meaning, we contribute, state, universities also, but it's not always about money. A lot of times it's about the rules that we've written, the knots that we've tied ourselves in that make it harder to have a shared common purpose than maybe could be optimal. And so that's a lot of opportunities that is in that space. Hopefully we can talk about that. So anyway, basic science doesn't have to mean, or science lab doesn't have to mean basic science in a vacuum. This idea that being a player, being a partner in the techno-economic context of a region is what we're trying to figure out. And I'm grateful to your team for putting this together, for you all for coming together and talking about it. But I know Thomas, because we started having this conversation 16 months ago, has been thinking very hard about this. And I'll be, maybe I don't mean to embarrass him, but a lot of the impetus for having these engagements, for thinking about the labs in a wider context, really started with Thomas's conversations with me about what the future of Oak Ridge could be, and the studies that he's made, not just across the country but around the world at other areas that are doing things with their the technical laboratory capacity in terms of a wider vision. So thank you for your leadership on that. And why don't I shut up now and let the moderator, hopefully this goes in whatever direction we want to take it in. But that's kind of what we're trying to figure out, is how can we do better? And I think just based on the list of folks that you all have brought together here, I think we're all on the same page about trying to figure that out. So thank you.
Thank you for the introductory comments. We have 228 people tuned in online in addition to the folks here. My name is Dave Keim. I'm the communications director at the lab, and let's start the conversation.
Yeah.
Our first question comes from Steve Hicks, President and Chief Executive Officer of Cadre 5 here in Knoxville.
Thank you, Dr. Fall and Dr. Zacharia, for giving us this opportunity. Having ORNL in our community is extremely important for many reasons. But what can we do better to attract and retain scientific and technical talent to this area? Workforce development is important for all of us, but we need to do more to draw from other regions and stop losing talent from individuals after they graduate.
Me first? Do you want?
Yeah.
And again, hopefully it's not just going to be about us up here. This is thanks for the question. It's a great one. It's a very complicated one, right? As you know, it's not easy to solve. I think that my experience, I'll just speak from my experience, you see a couple of different paradigms. You see places like where we have laboratories, for example, like the Bay Area, where people want to be anyway, because it's got even technical people want to be anyway, because there's this broad diversity of industries and opportunity and excitement. Sometimes in places like that, it's actually hard to attract people from private sector into, we've got laboratories in the DOE and in the DOD where harder to convince people to come to, and maybe a focus there. It has to be about growing the workforce locally, folks who want to be there because of family ties, because of, and then I would put Oak Ridge somewhere sort of in between, right? I mean, I think we can all agree this is not Bay Area San Francisco, and you probably like it that way. It's not Bay Area San Francisco. Got an incredible opportunity with the university, the laboratory. People love living here. It's a wonderful place to live. I do think that this idea of a wider technology region is kind of the secret to, I think you probably got people at Hello who grow up here and want to stay here. The folks who come here to use these wonderful world unique user facilities, you got them anyway because there's no other place to do that. Really, it's about this broader diversity of industries, spin-offs, and so forth that's going to draw people in here. I don't think there's an easy answer there. I think it's just hard work, building upon success, and growing it. The good news there is once you've built it, it's not ephemeral. It doesn't go away. I don't know, Thomas.
Yeah, well,
and maybe Randy's probably a great person.
I can comment on it, but I would throw this back. It's such an important topic that maybe Randy, you want to join the conversation.
Yeah, no, I think I'll echo some of the things that Dr. Fall said. As former commissioner of economic and community development, we had some success in attracting businesses here, but not nearly to the level that we think we should. I think a big part of it is just connectivity between all the resources that you mentioned. TVA, Oak Ridge National Labs, the University of Tennessee, and we've got a new spirit of cooperation now that I think can help us to make that connectivity and take it to a new level. But we've got so many advantages when I think about Silicon Valley and that area. Our taxes are extraordinarily low. It's a great quality of life. It's for the right family, the right person, this is a great place to locate your family, locate your business, and to build a business. But also, I think as important it is to attract businesses, we want to create businesses. And so one of the things that we're working hard on and currently with TVA and Oak Ridge National Labs, Oak Ridge National Labs is a great partner in helping us to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem. We've got some projects that we're working on even today to help to do that.
Yeah, if I could just throw in an idea there. I mean, I think one of the secrets of a place like Silicon Valley and this is this idea, people don't necessarily go to a place like that to work for a particular company. They go there with the confidence that they've got skills to offer and there are going to be lots of options there. So this idea of taking away barriers to flow between the sectors, if someone comes to the Oak Ridge area, they should be able to work for Oak Ridge National Lab. If they want to move over to the university, that should be relatively easy. If they want to go to the private sector, you know, we build up these barriers, whether it's health insurance or all sorts of other structural barriers that you know, folks want opportunity. The best folks want to come to places where they have a lot of choices, and so making sure that they have that feeling is, I think, a secret to attracting the best talent to a region. A secret.
Any additional thoughts, comments?
Jan, are you planning to stay here?
What?
Are you planning to stay in the
Yeah,
region
actually,
when you're done? I'm going to put you on the spot
Oh,
here.
yeah. Yeah, you can ask. That's a fair question. So right now I'm a junior, so I'm going into my junior year. So that's like a kind of halfway point.
Yeah.
I know I don't want to sound cheesy, but I'm not sure what my life plans are yet. But one thing that I actually am interested in is, I think, the 5-year master's program at UT. Yeah. I think that's a really cool option. Like, cause like you can look at it from my point, right? So I'm halfway done with, I guess, undergrad at this point. So I'm looking at some options, and the 5-year really like strikes me as like a really like good deal, both in terms of like for students and for research and for like connections. So I guess because what you can, it's like a really unique opportunity where you can like kind of test the waters of grad school and see if that's for you or not, without like having to, you know, fully commit to like a long like graduate program. So I guess to answer your question, I'm looking forward to finish my undergrad, and I'll be really excited to do the 5-year masters. So at least for the near future, I'm planning on staying and doing that. If Mr. Boyd can put in a good word.
Consider it done.
On the spot here, right?
Thank you.
So I think if I can add to the conversation, I think we have a terrific product to offer to anybody who is looking for building a life, building a career. And I can speak from experience, right? I mean, I came here thinking that I will stay for 2 years as a postdoctoral fellow, and I stayed for all the reasons that typically a family would look at, right? I mean, it's not just about the job, but the laboratory or the university or TVA or any number of small to medium enterprises that we have offers very good jobs. As Randy pointed out, in an area where there's low taxes, low cost of living, certainly compared to the Bay Area. I mean, this is a place where if you choose, you could actually have a life with one income, whereas in Bay Area, even if you have double incomes, it is still a major difficulty to survive. You are going from paycheck to paycheck. It's a place, wonderful place to, you know, with natural beauty, a lot of natural resources to raise your children, great schools, a great university where, you know, my daughter and my wife went to University of Tennessee. And so in some sense, it's a university town. It is the foothills of the most visited national laboratory. It's a national park. We have a major national laboratory, Tennessee Valley Authority, land grant, and frankly, what the community has done, particularly the Knoxville city. You know, there are a number of people who visited us who said this reminds me of Boulder, right? I mean, now what I would say is that if I were to describe Knoxville the way it is, people will say it's Boulder. People will not say it's Knoxville. So in some sense, we have not done a very good job of communicating how wonderful a place this is, how wonderful an opportunity. Clearly, it's not Bay Area in terms of the breadth of opportunity. But you and I have discussed, I mean, just in Oak Ridge National Laboratory alone, because of Office of Science investment in a major research reactor, a neutron sources, a nanotech facility, a biotech facility, leadership computing, and all the rest of it, we have anchor facilities that was used to build a city like Grenoble, which is the innovation city that France intentionally built. So we have all the ingredients, and I think that thanks to some of these conversations, I think the conversations that we're going on, we are beginning to ask ourselves, what can we do to put all these pieces together to take us to the next step? I don't think that there's anybody here in this community who wakes up in the morning and says that we want to be Silicon Valley. We want to be, the us in East Tennessee, but to make sure that we continue to attract and then retain, but also grow. I mean, so one of the things that, again, because of the partnership between UT and ORNL, we're also trying to grow our own sort of next generation workforce who would also probably create the kind of opportunities. Stacey.
So I really am a believer that success breeds success, and I think that we also have, as Thomas said and as Randy said, we have a really unprecedented opportunity because we have all the pieces, and we have the leadership in place now that believes in the community. Randy has been accused of saying he'll be a resident long after he's president. And so his commitment to the community, Thomas's commitment to the community, others in the community that are committed to the community and understand the promise that we have, I think is really what's going to help us drive to that next level. But it's also getting people we have to tell the story. So we have to tell the successful stories and let those people be the beacons for others to come along. And I think this is the time to make that happen. So it's a really exciting time to be part of this community.
Thank you for that input and that conversation. Related to that, we had a lot of questions around the topic of public-private partnership. And Maha Krishnamurthy, Vice President at the UT Research Foundation, was one of them who simply asks, what does success look like for DOE in a public-private partnership?
Well, why don't I take a stab at it, and then we can pass it off. Well, there's no right answer, right? Success. We could talk about success in a lot of different ways. I do want to. We were actually having this conversation a little bit earlier. I think that the underscoring the partnership is really important, right? I think that particularly growing out of the Cold War and a very government-focused sort of paradigm, we naturally, when we think about doing things in the Department of Energy, think about what I'll call a procurement model, kind of getting the best value for the government for the money that we spend, right? And I want to contrast that with the idea that was pioneered by NASA, by Congress for NASA with the Space Act. And the Space Act has a fundamentally different premise to it. The idea there is that the government will invest in technology in a way that is beneficial to the government, but also allows the buildup, the nurturing, the fostering of an industry around that. So the idea is, let's invest in something and grow the whole, not let's buy something and get the best value to the government. And it's a subtle but important difference. And I think that is where we in the Department of Energy want to try and head, consistent with the rules we have to follow, and we have rules we have to follow. And that is, hey, when we enter into an agreement, it's not just about, it really is about the mutual benefit, growing the pie, if you will, and not just the best value to the taxpayer. Now, the other aspect that I just want to throw out there for conversation, and I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, is this leadership team in the Department of Energy now, myself included, really believes in the idea that when we make investments in places like laboratories, we make investments outside of laboratories, it's not just about the government writing a check. It really is a partnership in the sense that we'd like to see state governments, local governments, maybe partner universities also contribute. And it's not so much about the magnitude of the contribution, though, you know, it needs to be meaningful. It's the idea that when we do something together, there's skin in the game by everyone, and that is a recipe for the success of any kind of endeavor. So, you know, and across our complex, we have more or less success with that idea depending on the different laboratory. And so, but that's important to us too, is this idea of partnership in a resources sense as well. But I don't want to take the whole floor there. Other folks have thoughts about what you think a successful public-private partnership is?
I would say it's
Yeah,
very
sorry.
much what we're seeing
Yeah.
here in Oak
Yeah.
Ridge and in East Tennessee. For many years, the lab has been a partner in the community. I've been with Mississippi State now for 25 years.
Right.
And Oak Ridge, the lab has always been seen as a partner in the community. And, you know, as UT Battelle has come along and the Research Foundation and others, you can see the partnership. Now, there's always room for improvement, but the investments that are made in the community outside of the lab, I think have borne great fruit and, again, can serve as a great example of how we do this.
And I'm remiss in not acknowledging the great stuff that's going on here at Oak Ridge, you know, between UT Battelle, certainly, and Oak Ridge. And there are other ways to be partners in a community too. The education
Right.
mission, providing internships, providing
Right.
opportunities, mutual aid sorts of agreements, obviously, with state and local officials. But I don't know, Thomas.
Billy?
Oh, Billy, hi.
I wanted to build on something President Boyd said a moment ago. When he was Commissioner of Economic Development for the state of Tennessee, Randy, you came up with what I thought was a pretty creative idea. Tennessee, like every other state, is often in a ferocious competition for new factories and new investments, sometimes with states or countries. And you developed a program where a company might have a need for some temporary research to help them solve a problem, usually a manufacturing problem. And you could, for $20,000 or $30,000, get somebody like Oak Ridge National Lab to solve that problem, which became the discriminator for bringing them into Tennessee. Is that generally accurate, Randy?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I didn't know if you were aware of that or what other labs did it, but I think it's been something great for Tennessee.
No, absolutely. The lab is, so when I became Commissioner of Economic and Community Development, Thomas's predecessor, Tom Mason, invited me over to the lab, and it was on my very first day of work, and I was driving to Nashville. He said, well, stop in, I'm on the way. So I stop in, and he gives me the tour of the MDF, and through the process, I think Craig Blue talks about taking carbon fiber from $15 a pound to $5 a pound. I'm not sure if we ever got quite there, but I thought, this is kind of interesting, but I'm in charge of jobs. I don't know when I'll ever use this. That was on the Monday. On Wednesday, I'm with the governor at the auto show in Detroit. And we have a meeting that afternoon with the president of General Motors, and this palatial office, and I'm this new guy, and I think, I don't know what to say to her. And she immediately starts talking about how they're trying to lightweight cars. So, well, I happen to know of a place in Oak Ridge that can help you do that. And so she ends up sending a group down here. But the lab has been such a great resource in attracting business, keeping businesses, and investing in businesses.
Right. And I do want to, we should acknowledge what Thomas and his team have innovated for the department, this program we call Infuse in the fusion space, which is a variation on what you said, and that is we, the Office of Science, fund Oak Ridge to be a consultant to small companies, right? So instead of their having to pay, come in and pay to use, it really is sort of an on-call, kind of a bank of consultancy, if you will, that folks can apply to use central funding.
So I think, again, through a large number of DOE, particularly Office of Science, as well as other programs, funded activities at the laboratory, there's a tremendous amount of such partnerships. I mean, I think it is fair to say that we have not intentionally translated those partnerships into job opportunities or economic opportunities beyond the obvious. So if you look at, you mentioned Infuse, but the way Office of Science and DOE in general funds large projects. And if you look at the laboratory's funding, probably less than 20% of the laboratory's funding comes through sort of single investigator funding. Most of the other ones are large projects that has a large number of industry partnerships. So if you look at the Quantum Science Center that was just recently funded, we have an exclusive partnership with Microsoft in that, right? Not too many people probably, you hear it, but you don't hear it, right? I mean, Microsoft is a leading investor in this space in a particular area. I mean, if you look at the major technology companies, they all have made specific bets in certain areas. Randy knows, Randy, we've had dinner where our partnership in high performance computing with AMD or NVIDIA or HP, pick any technology companies right at the CEO level where they know us, they come here, they interact with us. What we have, and so there is already a lot of built-in partnership that is true in automotive industry. Volkswagen is another example where there is a partnership between UT, ORNL, etc. So there is a lot of DOE-funded, DOE-led activity that leads to very interesting partnerships. What we have not done, and I think the opportunity is to capitalize on those partnerships with an intentional focus on where we want to go. I have asked, for example, Lisa Su, who is the CEO of AMD. These are companies that are, even through the pandemic, has grown exponentially. And so they are constantly, every 18 months, if you're a technology company, every 18 months, they are looking for a new campus somewhere in the world. And the question that we have asked, in fact, Lisa Su, is that, hey, tell us, why don't you, much like the Amazon headquarters, tell us, go through, put the greater Knoxville area through an analysis, and then tell us what the gaps are so that we can go fix it, we can go address it. So I do think that between the university, with TVA, and especially because of the cutting edge technology that Office of Science funds these laboratories, we are working with technology companies in the leading edge where they may not have a lot of investment in new areas, new companies, and they might be willing to locate here because of the kind of investment. So I think it's an opportunity to expand and build on the DOE-funded partnerships at these laboratories.
To give some perspective on the effectiveness and the interest in industry of the program that President Boyd described, that program has funded 27 projects, invested $5.6 million for an economic or capital investment of $2.6 billion, and an effect of almost 5,000 jobs in about 5 years. So that's a significant impact and is evidence of the interest in the private sector of leveraging the national labs. Jim Campbell, president of the East Tennessee Economic Council, thought you might want to jump in on this topic.
Yeah, and I wanted to start with a little history. In 2 weeks after the World War II ended, a gentleman named Waldo Cohn wrote an article in Science magazine saying he could create 66 or so isotopes that may be good and may be helpful in creating cures for cancers. He could produce those in bulk enough to give to other research organizations scattered across the country. The demand for those was so high, and Oak Ridge was the only place where you could get those isotopes, that they had to create a processing facility here in Oak Ridge, which was privately operated by Abbott Laboratories. They had to create a distribution system for that. They had to create a training facility because doctors and nurses needed to learn how to use these treatments when they became available. And for about 25 years, Oak Ridge was the can-do place to come develop that industry. Fascinating story. Plus, then you have people like Steve Hicks who say, okay, I need instruments that can read these scans. So a guy named Ron Nutt created a company called CTI that produced PET scans, CAT scans. He sold that company a few years back for about $3 billion. Public-private partnerships with the National Lab work, and they work well. My question for you is, we've done some good things. What's the next big thing we need to be focusing on in the world of science that's going to be commercially viable 5 to 10 years from now?
Well, while you start getting into what's the next big thing, you get in trouble. Everyone's got their pet. But look, we can, this.
If you want to be safe, you just say fusion energy.
Fusion energy.
Yeah.
Whatever Thomas is working on is the next thing.
That's the right answer.
Well, fusion is a obvious opportunity. Is it 10 years? Well, it's always 10 years, right?
Yeah.
It's always 20. Golly, one thing that the current Office of Science and Technology policy has done a good job of doing is sort of identifying these industries of the future.
Yeah.
And, I think there are things we're already all talking about. Machine learning, artificial intelligence, a big one. Quantum, we talked about the new quantum center here. Not completely clear what the economic opportunity is there, but completely clear that this is an area of science that is ripe for, it's just, blossoming right now. We want to take advantage of it. One thing that should be really obvious now is that there's a lot more opportunity in the biotechnology, biosecurity, bioeconomy space. That's a big one, and that's one that's not naturally the province of the Department of Energy.
Yeah.
We have to sort of worry a little bit about who does things when we're working at the level of federal government. On the other hand, we do have these world-unique facilities that cutting-edge biology cannot be done without them, and they are the responsibility of the department. So, those are a few, and there are, a number of other ones I think I'm probably forgetting to say. I do want to say, though, it's easy, attractive sometimes to orient towards the new, seemingly new and exciting. What is, we take very seriously our profound responsibility to keep pushing physics, chemistry, the basic physical sciences that don't have names like AI and don't have, QIS or a brand like that forward, because, QIS came out of that, right? This inexorable march forward on all the frontiers of physical sciences. We don't know what's going to come out of that. And so we can't forget that while we're...
Yeah, I am glad you said fusion, because my daughter just joined the EATER program here in Oak Ridge.
Here at Oak Ridge, okay, right.
Yeah, she may have a future after all. So
That's right. Well, they're making remarkable progress, and we are definitely sending them a lot of money to do that. So, other ideas on the... Is there something that folks would think we've missed here? Future opportunities?
I would just say, Chris, you alluded to, on the one hand, biology, bioeconomy is huge, a huge potential, and it's also interesting because it's scientifically very interesting. And Office of Science, as a funder of physical sciences, we have all the tools that revolution is going to rely on, but perhaps the end use is not entirely Office of Science purview. But I think as a laboratory, as a scientific institution, in order to attract the kind of talent that will maintain the laboratory as a vital organization for the future, we cannot not be involved in that area. And this is where, again, I think the partnership with the university is essential, because university provides that outlet for some of our staff who are working on neutron sciences or research reactor or high performance computing, data analytics, etc. And through partnership with the university and the university medical center, et cetera, you have the ability to take that science and sort of the use-inspired kind of research that we can do in our environment because of our partnership with the university.
Well, the other thing is that our national labs have a number of what we call superpowers, and one of those is this idea of convergence, and that is when we do biology, we're not just growing bugs in a dish. We bring to bear mathematics, computation, physical sciences, sensors, all the other things that are going on in a laboratory. Those spotlights get focused on the biology problem. That's pretty unique. And I did forget to mention a big one, and that is computing. At a place like Oak Ridge, we take that for granted. We almost take it for granted that within a year or so we'll have the first exascale computer here. But what is going on in computation is so much bigger than just raw power on a machine. There's a lot of aspects of that this country is doing, that the Department of Energy is doing. It's not so obvious to folks in terms of how we send data around, how we compute on those data, how the computers are connected to things like the spallation neutron source and other big user facilities. I mean, fundamentally transformative. That'll be a big story, and that will enable a lot of ancillary opportunities, economic and other opportunities besides basic science. So.
Thank you. Let's continue with higher education. We have representatives of both UT, obviously, as well as Pellissippi State. I would start with President Boyd.
Thank you, Jeff. So first, Dr. Fall, thanks for being here and engaging this conversation. I think this is a brilliant idea. Just reflecting on something I heard once, that the foundation of greater innovation and greater opportunity is greater communication. So just having this opportunity to communicate and share ideas, I think is terrific. Also, want to thank you and the office for the partnership with the University of Tennessee and Oak Ridge National Labs. UT's been involved with the lab since the very beginning, even before we had the co-manager role, which we've had now for 20 years. So we just want to say thank you for that. We had Undersecretary DeBar here a couple of times in the last year. But I remember his first visit, one of the comments he made was that at DOE, we can invest in science and create the science, but we can't create the scientists. And for us to lead in the future, we've got to create the scientists. And the best way to do that is to partner with the university. And so we just value the partnership tremendously. So just thinking somewhat self-centeredly or self-interestedly, and thinking about the vision for the Office of Science in the future, how can universities also support and engage in your vision? What kind of things can we do to help support you?
Well, when it comes to science, and which is our mission, you're the innovation engine. I mean, not to take anything away from our laboratories, but typically the way this works is the kernels of the new ideas are coming from folks at universities who are, putting the building blocks together in different ways and making the initial discoveries that then we, at a place like the Department of Energy, can scale up or can apply these big tools to. And that and this idea of partnership, again, I think that one way that we could be helpful is, and this is obvious in something like the Quantum Information Sciences Center that we stood up. There's a place that we didn't, when we were choosing those centers, we didn't say it was a requirement, but we did say it was a big selection factor that, hey, if you're willing to take the money, the resources that the Department of Energy is going to provide and add to those, we're going to pay a little bit more attention to those proposals. And so being willing to take those chances, and I say that recognizing that particularly now when we're in a little bit of an economic challenge, you have constraints on your budget, but hopefully if we're not making an effective case for why co-investment is going to lead to a greater good for everyone, let us know so that we can try and make another argument there. I mean, I do think that's sort of obvious. Yeah. Other thoughts or folks?
Terry, what did you pick up? Terry Brahams is the Executive Director for Economic and Workforce Development at Pellissippi State. Been there a while. Terry, what would you like to bring to the table here?
I think building off of President Boyd's comments, the local community colleges also have a role to play in this, and we've been fortunate to be a feeder for the University of Tennessee, to have opportunities to work on new training programs for things like 3D printing. But what else do you see can be the local community college's role in furthering DOE's mission?
Thank you. What a great question. And there's so much. You said yourself, one path to a research university, to graduate school, to a PhD, to a postdoc, to a scientist job starts at a community college. But gosh, Thomas, how many folks, you have 5,000 folks that work here, how many of those are PhD sort of principal investigators?
Roughly about, say, 1,200.
Yeah, 1,200. So maybe a quarter. What is everyone else here has other incredibly important skill sets, right? Whether it's accounting, finance, contracting, the engineering, obviously, and so forth. And it is a how should I put this? You can hire folks who, for example, have a communications background, or you can hire folks that have a communications background, know about a national laboratory, live it and love it, and that sort of thing. And so that local connection is so important for this huge spectrum of other opportunities at a lab or in the we talked about this techno-economic context of the region. But I want to put the question back to you, and that what is that we are doing or not doing that helps your students see a future at our laboratories, in the system, or in technology, or things like that? Do you feel that we're being effective partners with community college kinds of educational paradigms?
For the most part, yes. The opportunities that are afforded to our students, especially in our engineering technology programs, to do internships and co-ops here at the lab and the spinoffs like MDF are very important. The fact that we have faculty who actually work here, but then teach for us is also very key. And the investments that the lab and DOE have made that allow us to get new facilities or new equipment, all of those things are very important in helping us meet what we see as our mission of providing the workforce that is necessary. I think the continued partnership and dialogue always needs to happen, as Randy mentioned, the communication. So I think just making sure we're keeping those lines of communication open and exploring where those new opportunities will continue to be key.
In fact, if I can add, Dr. Fall today visited a lab today that he had not visited in his previous visits, and saw some of those technical staff who are non-PhD staff, who are doing really important critical work for the nation, that are highly skilled, super skilled folks. And that is something that differentiates the National Laboratory, is that I truly believe that it's not just the PhD, the PIs who are super specialized at the laboratory, but it's also the technical staff who come to work here. I like to say that as a scientist and engineer, if you can imagine something, a technician here at the laboratory will make it for you. They will figure out a way to make it for you. Now, that's important for the work that we do now, but we've had, as part of the conversation, we talked about jobs of the future. Well, this is through the pandemic, there's been a lot of changes that are occurring real time that's affecting how we work, the future of work. People have figured out, sort of the anxiety of maybe working from home has gone away. There are a lot of people who feel very comfortable working from home, and you actually see people moving from some of these expensive markets to places like Knoxville, right? So it's an opportunity. And when you think in terms of the future of work, future of education, future of partnership between education institution and national laboratories, I think we, in areas like industries of the future that Chris talked about, there is an opportunity for us to, much like in economic development where UT or now TVA, et cetera, can partner, so too can we partner for jobs of the future. So not every job in AI or machine learning has to be a PhD or a master's. You could actually develop certificate programs in partnership with, say, the lab, the university, and a community college to create the next generation of critical workforce for the jobs of the future. So I think we can take the sort of inflection point that we are all experiencing and give us a competitive advantage by creating those opportunities for us. I think those communities that put this thing together and take those, make those creative opportunities, I think will come out of it much stronger for the future. And I think that is an opportunity that lies in front of us.
I would agree with that.
Let me add one thing, because it's sort of an area of special attention, and that is, it seems to me that one of the really important roles that community colleges play is actually helping veterans transition, out of the military into the workforce by, plussing up their skills or aligning the skills they have with credentials and so forth. And what better group of folks to be the military is a very technical organization, just like a laboratory is a very technical, almost no matter what you do, you're working with technology. Never mind the special areas of technology that take, skill plus extra attention to detail, like nuclear operations, for example. And so making sure that pathway is as easy as possible for veterans to access opportunities here, and would be fantastic. And it's the right, obviously opportunity to help the veterans is important for us as well too.
Very good.
But we can be selfish about that. We want them to come work. We want them to come work for us.
Okay.
Stacy Patterson is Vice President for Research Outreach and Economic Development for UT. Stacy?
Well, Dr. Fall, thanks again for being in Oak Ridge today. The University of Tennessee has had a long and storied partnership with the Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the Oak Ridge community, really in general. And it's a really proud history. And our next step in this is we're very excited by this Oak Ridge Institute at UT and its potential as a force multiplier for both the university and the national lab. So can you talk a little bit about how you see your national laboratories working with the university communities in general to be more effective?
Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations. What a great opportunity. This is something we recognize across the complex, all the laboratories. I know that a big part of the Oak Ridge Institute is this idea of joint appointments. What better? A foot in the university, a foot with access to students, a foot at the laboratory with the access to the facilities here and the resources. More. What do you want to do? Let's do more of that.
Yeah.
That sounds, that sounds really good. And part of the magic, I think, that'll come of that is something that we've mentioned sort of in passing here a couple times. And that's raising the profile of the university, yes, but also the laboratory. I mean, so many. It's a little bit strange, I think, here in the Oak Ridge area that Oak Ridge National Lab has been such a part of the story of this area for so long that people get it. But if you look more broadly across the country, folks don't know what the national labs are. They don't know what they do. Most folks don't even know that the Department of Energy has that. There's just a lack, and that's on us. We haven't done a good job over the decades since we kind of climbed out of the Cold War, as I mentioned, in talking about what we do in an effective way, and we're trying to learn how to do that as well. But these kinds of initiatives bring a spotlight, again, to UT, but also to the lab. I think that's a great story. Thomas, no? Anyone else?
Well, I mean,
Johnny, you're quiet.
Can I just take a moment to say thank you to the Department of Energy for the $20 million investment in Oak Ridge National Labs. The University of Tennessee is stepping up to put in $4.5 million over the next each year for the next 10 years. The state of Tennessee, pre-COVID, had made a commitment, and we were confident that they'll step up again. But I think it's a great example of the Department of Energy, the federal government, the university, and a state all going in together to really make a difference. And we were missing the private element, and we're looking to find partners from the private side as well. But I think it's hopefully a model for other labs maybe around the country where everybody can work together for the greater good. The word force multiplier, which I'll start using more often, but I think it really is that.
Yeah, I personally believe that Oak Ridge Institute has the potential of being a difference maker, force multiplier, because it adds another element, purely from a national laboratory point of view, from an Office of Science program. You want talented young students who are probably not as constrained by what cannot be done. One of the challenges is that as you become mid-career, you already have preconceived notions of what can and cannot be done. And the great advantage of having an environment where you have bright, talented faculty together with a next generation workforce, bright students, challenging norms, pushing new ideas, challenging us to do better. That is truly the opportunity that Oak Ridge Institute offers Office of Science and this laboratory. Plus, as I said before, it also allows us to take our unique facilities the Department of Energy funds here and drive it all the way to societal good in a number of areas, from energy security, economic security, national security, biosecurity, etc., but also work with industry in a different way. Hopefully, my hope is that, and ambition is that these students will not only go become, the next generation of workforce at our sister labs, our universities, but also industry, but a significant fraction of these Oak Ridge Institute students will stay here and be the next Ron McNutt, go create the next $3 billion industries. Because I think when you are young, talented, full of ideas and the ability to take risks, and with a little bit of encouragement, that is truly the ecosystem that I hope Oak Ridge Institute will create at the intersection of UT and OR now. So it's an exciting new chapter.
Well, and so I think your question is a little broader than just Oak Ridge Institute, right? And there are some other, I think it boils down a little bit to this idea of breaking down barriers and the flow of people and ideas and resources. And to be explicit, the Office of Science has had facilities. All the facilities we have are not just at national laboratories. We've traditionally or historically had significant, particularly in the laser area, facilities out at universities. We're doing a major, call it an experiment, but it's, for the long haul, the facility for rare isotope beams, not at a national laboratory, but a Office of Science user facility at Michigan State University. Everything doesn't have to be on the laboratory property. There's a big, where it makes sense, where there is partnership, and a big part of the reason that MSU has this facility is the contribution of the state of Michigan. There's a lot of opportunity there. We don't have to, even though you have a very large piece of property here, not everything has to be on the reservation at Oak Ridge.
Thank you.
As we move into our last half hour, wanted to let a couple of other folks in the room ask questions and shift. This is a conversation on science in the community. So let's go to Andy Wallace, president of the Anderson County Economic Development Association, who has a question related to community impact.
Well, let me start by thanking Oak Ridge National Lab, Dr. Zacharia and Dr. Fall, for the opportunity to be here today. The importance of the National Lab here is, to America has always been understood. To the area, I think the lab started off with the locals. It was a preferred employer, and it's moved into that. Now it's moved into more of an economic driver for the area. With that being said, where does ORNL in the next 10 years as it pertains to growth? Where do you see yourself, in that growth as far as Oak Ridge, Anderson County, and also the region.
Well, can I defer to Thomas on this to start with, and then then the reason I say that is in my opening remarks, I just I've had a number of conversations with him about just an idea that he's put a lot of thought into about the region, and I think actually with a great deal of specificity in terms of the opportunities. Maybe we could start with that.
Okay, so as Chris mentioned, we've been, well, first of all, Chris has from the get-go asked the question, if you had all these assets and if you were doing from clean sheet of paper, how would you do this while meeting the department's mission, but also having much more of a force multiplier, as the term of today, but much more of a regional and national impact. And I think for some time now, and particularly this administration has recognized that economic security is national security, economic security, jobs is national security, and jobs, innovation jobs, right? So if you look at innovation jobs in this country, the data is very, very striking. Bulk of the innovation jobs that have been created in this country have been created in just 41 counties. Think about it, 41 counties in 5 cities. And you know what those cities are, the West Coast and the Northeast, right? Now, when you think about that, this country has over 3,000 counties. Tennessee alone has 95 counties. So that means that there's great opportunities, right? Now, it also is the case, we touched on it, while Bay Area has lots of advantages, in terms of workforce, universities, et cetera, lots of industry, et cetera, it is a saturated market. And there are a number of reports that have been produced that says, America, in order to compete globally, has to have more of these innovation cities. And they have identified 100 or so next tier innovation cities. Now, out of those 100 innovation cities, 4 of them are in Tennessee. You can imagine which ones those are. One in the east, the greater Knoxville area, Nashville, Memphis, and Chattanooga. Of those 4, Knoxville is the highest ranked city, number 44. And it's basically a combination of the workforce that University of Tennessee produces, the amount of technology jobs between UT, TVA, ORNO, et cetera, the amount of research, patent. There's a formula. But basically the point is that there's a lot of built-in capability here. And I can tell you the difference between number 44 and number 1 in this particular case happens to be Syracuse, is not that much different. So the gaps are not that great. So there's a proposal by Brookings Institute, and actually there's a bill by Senator Coons, and I forgot who the co-sponsor is, but $80 billion. Now, it's an authorizing bill, but that is currently being worked on. It's being drafted. $80 billion. The Brookings Institute recommends that out of these 100 next tiers innovation cities, that the nation should select 10 and decide to invest $1 billion a year for 10 years. So $10 billion per city, $100 billion over the 10 cities. Now, $100 billion sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But in terms of the kind of investment that's being made to stimulate the economy, to create jobs, it's just a drop in the bucket. So there is we don't know whether it's going to happen, but there is a possibility. My point was that, when you talk about $1 billion a year for 10 years, well, thanks to Department of Energy in Oak Ridge, DOE invests $4.5 billion a year, predictably. Okay, we already received that level of investment. We already have the state's flagship university. We already have all these other assets that we already discussed. So the question becomes, what are the gaps, and how do we begin to intentionally connect the dots and fill in the gaps to where we can leapfrog, not only to the advantage of us in this community, but in the cost of our nation in terms of economic security as a national security, creating the next generation of innovation jobs. And there, I think DOE has made a huge investment, a huge bet on this laboratory over the last, during the time, Chris and the current leadership team and DOE has been, this laboratory has grown dramatically. Office of Science has grown dramatically from about $5+ billion to $7 billion. And because we are a broad laboratory, we have grown. We've grown from about $1.6 billion to this year we are about $2.3 billion. And these investments have been in strategic new areas that are aligned with where potential innovation jobs could be. So I think it's an exciting time. It's an opportune time for us to put the pieces together, work together as a community in partnership with the Department of Energy. And the other thing that I would say is that these innovation cities, both of us mentioned Grenoble. Grenoble is a city that was intentionally created. It's a 2 million strong, high-tech city with high-tech jobs in the foothills of the Alps, right? And if you look at the footprint of that city, Johnny would not even notice if that's such a city were plunked down in the middle of the reservation because it's about 400 acres, right? 400 acres is just a small piece. And so there are areas, for example, in the west end of Oak Ridge or nearby the laboratory. What is the advantage of doing that? If you have a mixed-use, high-tech, so it doesn't have to be 400 acres. It could be 50 acres. It could be 100 acres. Mixed-use facilities. Now it is not only a magnet for small to medium-sized companies, innovation jobs to co-locate, but it's also a place for our staff to live and work and walk to restaurants and all the rest of it. And to some extent, Knoxville has been growing this way. It's just up to Solway, and you jump over the bridge, and we are here. So I think it is time for us to think of us as a greater, Knoxville metropolitan area, rather than divide it into smaller chunks. Embrace the region, the 9 counties. Pick your collection of number of counties, certainly around the laboratory, from where we draw the people who come to work at the laboratory. Connect the dots, and I certainly believe, I too believe that it doesn't rhyme after director I will still be resident, but still I too will be a resident. And nothing would please me more to see that in the next 10 years, this sort of vision come together to where, again, I have no aspiration for this place to be Nashville or Bay Area, but for us to be the best version of the greater Knoxville area that we can be is something that we should work towards. And I think we can, and the investment that Office of Science makes in this laboratory is a huge flywheel to achieve that vision.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The predictability and the predictability of growth. Look, you've got the world's premier spallation neutron source that's going to double, in size with another target station. You've got this neutron reactor, the best in the world, that's going to be recapitalized. The exascale computer in a year. This is a leadership computing center. Something will come after that. So that predictability is here. We have some opportunities that are sort of within the purview of the Department of Energy and our lawmakers and our policymakers in terms of maybe opening up co-locating public-private sort of engagement. But really, this flywheel that Thomas mentioned is something you can count on. So what are you guys going to do with it, right? That is, you can live off of that or exist with that, or take the opportunity that comes with that known sort of predictability to build on it. And I think you wouldn't be here if you weren't thinking about how to build on it. So,
thank you for that. That great answer. It's as long as I've been in Oak Ridge, been a very interesting evolution of thought to see into thinking of ourselves regionally and what the larger impact can be. It may depend on young folks like Jan Jakovsky We wanted to go to him for the next question, or he may wish to lobby the president for some other favor. That's fine.
Take advantage of
John?
that. Always be closing.
Okay, yeah, no. I had a question. So, two, first is, will the shift to online learning and meeting make collaborating on research more accessible for students who are interested?
Yeah. I mean, the easy answer is yes. It's harder right now. I mean, we're going through a transient where we're all, look at us here, we're all being forced to adjust in our daily lives in all sorts of ways, but we're also figuring out, we can do this. It may not be the most fun, though, it may not always be the most enjoyable in terms of human interaction, but it turns out for some of the stuff we do, it's actually more efficient. It actually works better. I haven't physically signed a piece of paper in my day-to-day business where I sign, 2 or 3 things a day since March. It's all electronic now. We're able to comb through these knots, make things more efficient. And on the science side, our user facilities that we talk about, the neutron sources, the X-ray, the synchrotrons, everyone is now, we got a problem. We're going to have a problem for a while. How do we automate this so that the users can be anywhere in the world, manipulate their experiments online, and a robot, arm puts a sample in. Maybe we have some human help in there, but the idea is that we can do a lot of this work in science remotely. It's not going to be a complete solution. It takes some of the fun out. It's going to take some of the creativity out. We're going to have to find other ways to keep getting together. Zoom works, but it's not, not optimal. But I'm not worried. I think again, the downside is we're distributed for science. The upside is it doesn't matter where you are, you can participate now. So if you think, who is your team now? Is it folks that happen to live in the same place or in the same dorm or work in the same lab, or can be the smartest people on a subject no matter where they live? There's a ton of opportunity. And you guys are the generation, with your fingers on your phone all the time, who can adjust to this best, right? You know how to live virtually already. I mean, more or less. And so, anyway, I'm optimistic. I don't know what other folks in the room think.
So I guess when the dust settles after all the lockdown and stuff, you see the infrastructure of online collaboration, research, and working. That'll still remain there as a tool that can be used.
Absolutely, and it's going to be better. So we are adjusting now using the tools we have. I probably need to be careful not to do a product placement, but the Zooms, the
online chat,
other platforms, we're kind of adapting those to work together. The opportunity is to go way beyond those, using things like assisted reality, interaction with people, sort of linked in an automatic way to data and so forth. We have all sorts of opportunity. So I think it'll continue and it'll grow and it'll be fine. And then we'll also have so we'll have that plus the ability to get back together when all of this is over again.
So I guess that's kind of an unintended positive outcome of the lockdown, that this technology has been forced to mature. So it's been a little bit more.
That's right. And let's not forget for a minute the just really tragic consequences for an awful lot of people. But boy, I can do a lot from my house. Commuting's been a lot easier. The air's a lot cleaner. There's a lot of things that have happened as a consequence of COVID and our sort of reset. Not least that we just rethink how we do everything. Do we need to start again the way we're doing it before? I don't think so in many cases.
And how can we inspire students in grade school to become interested in STEM fields and encourage their interests?
Will you tell us? One of the great things is, I think, and this is where labs like Oak Ridge just are super effective, and that is, being a scientist is an awfully abstract and maybe even intimidating concept until you walk into a lab and see a dumpy guy like me, doing science. Oh, that looks like me. This is a person doing things. Maybe a little bit complicated, but I see that a person can can be a science. So internships.
Yeah.
You know, visits in the early stages. You know, opening the lab to kids coming in and seeing what a spallation neutron source looks like, or all the other things you got going on here. Internships, that sort of ladder of opportunity, keeping people engaged. As you mentioned, your award from the Office of Naval Research, where I used to be, the providing, you know, kids like to compete, kids like to get involved. Providing those sorts of opportunities are uniquely things that our national labs can do, bringing people together and you know, getting people excited about it.
I'd like to build,
I think. Yeah.
I'd like to build on your last two questions, because topically, just last week we had Governor Lee here asking about how we could take Oak Ridge Institute's knowledge and expertise and somehow share it with the rest of the state, especially K through 12 in rural communities. And just this morning we were talking with Senator Alexander about an idea that he had back when he was governor called a Governor's Academy that has since passed. But the idea is to do a Governor's Academy during the summers somewhere near Oak Ridge National Labs, facilitated by the University of Tennessee and high school instructors as well, but to get that next generation of young scientists and make science cool.
Yeah.
If they come to Oak Ridge National Labs, it will be cool. They'll be inspired. But your former question was about, you know, the virtual learning. The challenge in the past was you'd bring the smartest kids from all across the state together for a 4 to 6 week camp, and then they'd go home and they'd be dispersed and lose that connectivity. Now we can have a virtual academy where they start off 4 to 6 weeks here and they stay connected until they pursue higher education. So we're working on it.
Yeah, thanks.
So if I can just add a couple of thoughts quickly. One, I think unlike a major metropolitan city, one of the things, advantage and disadvantage is that, you know, during the early days of the pandemic, we benefited from the fact that we are a sparsely populated state compared to you know, New York and California, etc. But then also the flip side is that we don't have the same kind of infrastructure for e-learning, you know, because the broadband penetration is not the same. So that's something that, again, we as a community need to work on, work with the state, work with the federal government in terms of addressing that. The second thing is that I think that this has been a, you know, this is not just technology, it's a technology issue. We've been, whether we like it or not, we've been making policy on the fly because it has been required. You just said that, you know, you have not signed a piece of paper, it's all been electronic. So just by virtue of the necessity, we have been adjusting policy framework. And I think it's a great equalizer for diversity. I mean, so for example, at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, because of the type of work that we do, as much as we have tried, we do not have an on-site daycare, which is a big challenge for particularly you know, young parents, especially young parents, period. Now having the ability to work from home, right? So whereas previously it was, you know, you can stay with your child for so many weeks, now we can begin to think about, okay, well, we can effectively work from home. So even after the pandemic is behind us, we can think in terms of, okay, so during the early part of your career when you are, you know, raising children, you have the ability to allow people to work from home and still be very productive and meaningfully engaged in the scientific enterprise is an experiment that we have done that gives us great confidence, which will also help us attract a much more diverse set of people to come to this laboratory. So I think there are lots of opportunities to learn from what happened to position the laboratory for the future.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes. Let me very quickly put in a plug for all the educators that are tuned in and parents or anyone who's interested. We are still doing virtual community outreach to try to reach the students that Jan asked about. You can go to stem.ornl.gov, and anyone is welcome to take a virtual tour of the lab while you can't come on site physically. We have many of our facilities where you can walk through them virtually on your computer, watch videos as you go through. Go to ornl.gov, click on our interactive map under the About Us tab, and the interactive map has a virtual tours tab. Cool. Billy Stair, we'll go to you for the last question.
Let me try to raise a final point about the conversation you and Thomas had about 5 minutes ago. Sometimes we're so close to things that we don't see them clearly, and you have the advantage of having been all over the country to Albuquerque and Chicago and the Bay Area and so forth. In terms of trying to maximize our potential economically, what do you see perhaps as the gaps or things that we need to improve on here? Accessibility or venture capital, or that's a wide open question. What do you see?
Yeah, there are a lot of elements to success for those areas, but they did build on, I think it's probably useful, I know we have a history buff in the audience or in the group here, to study the history of a place like Silicon Valley. They started out in a very focused way, right? Very focused on microelectronics and built on that. It became the place to be if you were designing, originally fabricating, but designing microelectronics. Now, we know it's a place to go if you're in software. It's now the place you go in biotech. I think it's important, and it's recognizing that a place like Oak Ridge does a whole bunch of stuff and a whole bunch of stuff really well. But I wonder if you can answer this. This is actually the same question that came up when we were talking to Thomas Jefferson Lab in Newport News. Answer the question for yourselves. If I want to work in X, then Oak Ridge is the place to go in the country. I don't know what that X is. It is some intersection between local interest and seeds of companies, the ability of the lab, the interests and expertise of the university. But figuring out what that thing is, I think is important, because you get people coming for that, and then they start building these other areas. And of course, I think that it's a little bit beyond the basic science space. I mean, we already know if you want to do neutrons, you come to Oak Ridge. That's not really a product that most people want to buy anyway. What is that area of commercially viable technology that if you want to work in that, you come to Oak Ridge? I can't answer that for you. My sense is you want to start with a focus like that and talk about that and go all in at the state level, the regional level, the university level, to talk about Oak Ridge as being that place. I don't know. Other thoughts, Tom?
No, I think you're exactly right. Now, the one thing that I would say is that we are trying to figure that out, and so one of the things that Randy and Jeff Lyers, who's the CEO of TVA, and I have launched is a climate survey, I guess, is to find out what is the entrepreneurial climate of our region, and what are the gaps, and what are the things that we should be focusing on. And so we are taking steps to identify what those one or two big bets ought to be, that we then can intentionally focus on to try to bring entrepreneurs for us to invest in and to create that opportunity. So I think it's a work in progress, but I would say, Randy, and there are many of you here who have got a lot more experience in corporate knowledge. Having been here only 34 years, I feel like there is, in my 34 years, we have the best alignment today between the major stakeholders in the community, institutional stakeholders in the community. And so I think it is it's that moment in time that if we really capitalize on, great things can happen, and that we can all be proud of.
Right, and you're not building something from scratch here. You have a baseline, sort of like the baseline flywheel idea for the throughput of resources here. You got a very diverse research university. You have a very diverse research laboratory. The question is, what are you going to hold up among those things as the marquee sort of driver of folks to get here? And that's a little bit outside of, that's a little bit of the marketing angle, frankly, because you got all the raw materials, I think.
Thank you all very much for taking part in this community discussion. I hope that it's been enlightening. I hope you've come to appreciate the impact of the Office of Science, not only in Tennessee, but nationally, and the leadership role that Oak Ridge National Laboratory plays. Before we go, I wanted to offer obviously Dr. Fall and Dr. Zacharia the chance to make any closing comments, but I also wanted to ask Johnny Moore, as the Department of Energy's site manager for Oak Ridge National Laboratory, if he had anything to say in closing.
Thank you very much, David. I think that it's wonderful to be able to hear all the ideas that people have expressed and how you can partner and how, whether it's public-private partnerships, how we can work better with our educational institutions in East Tennessee, how we can engage in what I would consider to be those opportunities that can help the regional community grow in a way that is beneficial to everyone in the community. And I'm a lifetime Tennessean, really, and I've been in a lot of different parts of Tennessee. And what people sometimes forget is we have lost a lot of people from East Tennessee to go to many other parts of the country that have been highly successful. So those attributes that are here are here. Mm-hmm. We should not forget that. Whether it's Pellissippi State or Roane State, they have always risen to the occasion when we needed specific technologists or other people that help us in the resource. University of Tennessee has always stepped up when we had very specific needs. And from a DOE vision standpoint, Dr. Falls talked about many of the important programs that we have, but you don't always have to believe you have to hit a home run every time that you're going onto the field to play. And that's the part I think that we need to look at it from an endurance standpoint in the community, and being able to have those targets of opportunity, as Dr. Fall brought up, I think is very important. But I think we have a lot of the formula, we have a lot of the elements of success as it is today. But when you're talking about venture capital, when you're talking about making decisions about new growth areas, and then trying to make your investments in those, President Boyd would be able to answer this better than me, but there's a lot of opportunities that are conceived that are not successful because you don't have all the ingredients together at the very same time. So you don't have to hit a home run every time. What you have to have is the will and the commitment for people to work together to be able to have a shared vision and to be able to be successful. So listening to what everybody had to say, I'm thinking those are the core elements that we should celebrate and believe that we have a lot of those ingredients in place here in the community today. And we depend very much on the next generation because many of us have been around for a long time, and we're counting on the focus on science. You know, we in the department also support the Science Bowl, and that is across the nation, which is a great opportunity for competition and people both in middle school and high school to get excited and interested in science. There's a lot of things that we do together that help us to be successful in the future. So, thanks.
Chris?
Well, there's nothing broken here. The opportunity, there's upside opportunity. There's not. Right. We're not dealing with a crisis. I just don't have a lot to say. I just want to say thank you all. I don't think that you all would be here, or the folks who joined us virtually would be with us if you didn't care deeply about the lab and about the opportunity. And my commitment to you all is this is the beginning of a conversation. We want to understand how to do this better. We think we can. We recognize frankly, our limitations based on where we came from out of the Cold War, where we're not, we don't jump up and down about stuff. We're quietly effective, but we can do more when it comes to this idea of the techno-economic context to the region being this anchor tenant. And so looking for ideas. And thank you all for letting us come down and engage.
Let me take this opportunity to also thank all of you. I like to remind everybody, particularly the folks who joined the laboratory, recent employees, that sometimes if you get a chance, go spend a few minutes at the graphite reactor, just sort of let the history soak in, right? This is a laboratory that won the war, changed the world, and it's something that we still aspire to make a difference of that scale. And it's all possible because of the investment that DOE in particular Office of Science, makes at this laboratory. So I want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Chris Fall for being here, engaging in this conversation, but also for your continued support for this great institution, that you and all of us do it. And thank you all for participating both in person as well as virtually. So thank you very much. Thank you for spending a wonderful afternoon with us.
If you're tuned in remotely, thank you and goodbye. If you're in the room, please stay seated. We want to get a photograph to remember the group.
Thanks for doing such a great job, Dave.
Well, this was a good discussion. I appreciate everyone enduring the masks and the social distancing. So force multipliers are phrase of the day.
All right.